Good deal. Well, for those of you I've never met, which are the majority of you in this room, my name is Mike, and it truly is an honor to be with you this morning. I appreciate Dr. Cantor issuing me the invitation along with Mr. Epling here, who's been a long friend of mine, longtime friend of mine. But I am so glad to be here. And driving up from Atlanta this morning and driving north, went against all the traffic. It was a beautiful thing. Everybody was heading south, and I was heading north, and it was just so good to get to be with you guys. Tell you a little bit about me before we dive in. I think most of you got a little outline on the way in. That'll be our guide this morning that we'll use here in a couple minutes if you want to pull that out. So it keeps me on track. I'll end up talking about the Braves and their collapse or the Falcons and their woes, and it won't be good, all right? So that'll help us stick to our guns a little bit. I've been married this month 20 years, met my wife 20 plus years ago up at Liberty, up in Lynchburg, Virginia. Got married, moved to Atlanta, moved to Kennesaw, Georgia in 1991 with a grand goal of going on to bigger and better things, and find myself in Kennesaw 20 plus years later. Now I've got a 17-year-old son, senior in high school. It's almost some of your ages. A 14-year-old daughter, and so I'm a dad, a husband. I get to be a pastor. I'm a coach in the evenings on travel baseball teams and the high school team there at Alatoona, and work with football teams. So I live a life like you all do. It's busy, it's crazy, doing a lot of things. Had absolutely no dream of ever really being in ministry. My goal was to be a professional baseball player. That was what my heart was. I got a scholarship, 4-year scholarship, to college up in Virginia, to Liberty, to play baseball, and I thought that was the way that life was going to turn out. And as we'll talk about today, life doesn't always turn out like you think it would. And so I remember it was a blustery, windy March afternoon in Blacksburg, Virginia, at Virginia Tech. I was pitching against Virginia Tech. The wind was blowing. It was blowing very hard to left field when they were hitting. All right, and it didn't blow when we were hitting, but when they were hitting, and so I come into pitch. First batter, I strike him out. Next guy comes up. First pitch, line drive over left field. No big deal, home run. Next pitch, line drive over the left field fence. The next pitch, third batter, fly ball over the scoreboard in left field. And so 3 pitches, 3 dingers. Coach comes out to get me, takes the ball from me. Coach Bobby Richardson, a lot of you don't know, he's an old Yankee. But he gets the ball from me. I go to the dugout, and it was like the parting of the Red Sea when I got in the dugout. Nobody wants to be cursed, right? I mean, nobody gets anywhere near me. And I set my glove down, sit all by myself on the bench. My pitching coach got him, Al Worthington, pitched 20 years in the majors, pitch coach for Minnesota Twins. Coach Worthington comes by, and he taps me on the leg. And I said, Coach, in all the years you played, did you ever have a game like that? Just wanting some sympathy, want some consolation? He went, no. All right, and so I knew that maybe God had a different plan for my life, and the team voted, and they agreed. All right, and so God did have a different plan. So today, here's the deal. Sitting in this room today, some of you are education majors. Some of you are planning on going into full-time vocational ministry. Some of you are wanting to do missions. Some of you are getting a business degree. It really doesn't matter what got you in this room today. Here's one thing I can promise for every one of us. We will all face obstacles. Every one of us, at some point in our journey, you are going to come up against something that looks bigger than you, that looks stronger than you, that's more daunting than you ever thought it would be. And let me tell you what obstacles do. Obstacles make you question everything you know and everything you believe. Some of you, Dr. Cantor was telling me how many couples here have met and they've fallen in love and they've gotten married. I didn't find out how many have met, fallen in love, and got broken up with, but I did hear a lot of you. You met, you fell in love, and you got married. And you're going to stand at an altar, and I do tons of weddings. You're going to stand at an altar, and you're going to look at this person, and you're going to think, I cannot imagine my life without this person in it. I love them. They're the most wonderful, incredible person in the world. And I mean, this person is making all my dreams come true. And you're giving vows to each other. And we as ministers are standing there going, you have no idea what you're getting into. It is not good. And a year, 2 years, 3 years in, you're going to face obstacles as a couple. You're going to find out they're not perfect. They're going to find out you're not perfect. You're going to find out their flaws. You're going to find out their flaws. And all of a sudden, You are going to face an obstacle. It may be in your first job. It may be in your first opportunity in ministry. You have a heart to go serve God, and you show up, and there's people there that don't think you should be there. And all of a sudden, you've got an obstacle. Here's the deal. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what avenue you choose to get into. You are going to have obstacles He's called you to. The enemy can't have your soul. The enemy can't have your heart. But let me tell you what he can do. He can distract you from the ultimate goal of why God put you here. And that distraction will always come in the form of an obstacle. It will come in the form of something that's bigger than you. A few weeks ago, we were talking about the Falcons. A few weeks ago, I drove down the night before the Eagles game, and I walked into the room, and this is, God, my third or fourth year doing it, and there's of a 53-man roster, there's 25 guys in chapel every week from the Falcons, from Roddy White to Jason Snelling to Todd McClure to Dunter Robinson, the DB. I mean, you name them, you've seen them on TV, they're all in there. Now, here's the deal. They have a heart to let God use their lives to be an influencer. I mean, you know what they face? They faced obstacles too. They're just the people, they're just guys a couple years older than you and larger than you. All right, and I mean, I have never felt so short, fat, and white in my entire life. I'll be honest with you. As I walk in, those guys, they're like, give him a hug. I'm like, man, your armpit is really nasty. All right, they're hugging. Come here, man, come here. And they're hugging on you. But they all have a purpose. Hey, they play the game of football. But their purpose isn't playing the game of football. Their purpose is bigger than that. Now, let's pick up the story. The nation of Israel has come out of captivity. Moses has led them out. And God has given them something, and it's called the Promised Land. It's called the Promised Land because God promised it, all right? It's not real hard. God promised the Promised Land to the nation of Israel. And so Moses has sent the people in to see if we can go ahead and go in and get the land that God promised us, all right? Now, y'all help me out real quick. Respond back to me. Was it their idea to get the land, or was it God's idea to get the land? Whose idea? God's. Big deal. Because obstacles can even be big even when we know God's in it. We're going to see that this morning. Look at point number 1 in your outline, all right? And we'll read the passage. This group of people that went in to get what God had already told them they could get, they overanalyzed the obstacles. They spent so long staring at the obstacles. Let me tell you what they did. The obstacles froze them in their tracks. If you remember the story of King David, right? He shows up at the battlefield for his brothers. He's a kid. He's a teenager. He takes breads to his brothers who are supposedly the fighting army, right? And they're down there, and they've been facing off with a guy named Goliath for 40 days. They ain't done anything about it. They were overanalyzing the obstacle, and they didn't do anything. This group of people did the same thing. Let's pick up the story. Here's what the group, the spies is who they were. They came back and they gave Moses this account. We went into the land which you sent us. It does flow with milk and honey. You're right. And here's its fruit. Hey, Moses, it really is a good place. I mean, it really is a good place. Look at what they go on to say. But the people who live there are what? What did they say? They're what? They're powerful. They're strong. Moses, they're bigger than us. They're strong. Now, I don't think they had a field day while they were there to have races and softball throws. I don't know how they figured they were more powerful, but they've asserted now, Moses, there's no way we can do this. These guys are more powerful. And look at what they went on to say. These guys are more powerful, and the cities are fortified, and they're very large. And we even saw the descendants of Anak there. We saw more giants there. And the Amalekites live in the Negev, and the Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites. They live in the hill country, and the Canaanites, and I'm sure some termites and other people that were down the road. And they all live near the sea along the Jordan. And then Caleb, who was one of the two guys that didn't overanalyze, Caleb spoke up. And here's what he said before Moses. we should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. Now, there's a reason Caleb thought this way. And there's a reason Joshua thought this way. We're going to talk about it. Everybody else goes, ain't no way. These guys said, oh, there's a way. There's a way. We can certainly. Here are the critics. You're going to have critics to the purpose and dream God's called you to. I'm just telling you. I'm 42 years old, and as I look back, I had to graduate in college, in my years in ministry and in life, you're going to have your critics. But the men who had gone up with him said, we can't attack those people, for they are stronger than we are. And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land they'd explored. And they said, the land we explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw there are of great size. We saw the Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak who come from Nephilim. We seem like, listen, here's the optimum, here's the phrase, guys. We seem like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we look the same to them. I know God called me to it. But when faced with this obstacle, I feel like a grasshopper in my own eyes. And I know I have to look the same to them. Now, I don't think that they sent an advance guy to go in to say, do these people look like grasshoppers to you? Yes or no? I don't think they did that. I think they surmised in their mind, we don't have a chance. They overanalyze the obstacles. I'm going to challenge you guys to do something. When God's called you to do something great for Him, study it, analyze it, do it. If you overanalyze it, you will do nothing. When we started Northstar back in 1997, we heard a million reasons why it wouldn't work. Trust me. If we had figured out what we were doing long enough, we would still be at the drawing board. In fact, trying to figure out how to do it. And as we look back, over 2,000 people who've come to know Christ there might not know Christ today if we'd stayed at the drawing board. These guys, they overanalyze the obstacles. But look at point number 2. Here's the piece they missed. And they underestimated God's power. They wrote God out of the equation. And they looked at it. They underestimated. If God is involved, what could we do? Now, you'll help me out. Respond back to me. Was it their idea or God's idea they get the land? God's. Therefore, if it was God's idea, you think He's going to make a way for them to do it. They didn't even think about that. Didn't even cross their mind. Look at Numbers 14. That night, all the people of the community raised their voices and they wept aloud. Numbers 14, verse 1. That night, all the people, these people have been in slavery. They've crossed the Red Sea. Unbelievable, the miracle they saw with Moses. And all the Israelites, they grumbled against Moses and Aaron and the whole assembly and said to them, if only we had died in Egypt or in this desert. We would rather be back as slaves, which they tried to get out of for years. We'd rather be back as slaves than to die here in this desert. Why is the Lord bringing us to this land only to let us fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be taken as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to go back to Egypt? And they said to each other, we should choose a leader and go back to Egypt. All of a sudden now, this group, these 10 are now speaking for all. And because the group of 10 who could have said we can, said we can't, the whole nation lost. The whole nation lost. All right? Now, here's the deal. The purpose God has created you for. I'm going to go ahead and tell you. You could write it down today and almost be embarrassed writing it down. Here's why I think God put me here on this earth. You are going to have people that are going to tell you you can't. You're going to have people that tell you it can't happen. It won't happen. Don't ever underestimate God's power when you face your obstacle. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Would y'all pray with me? Man, right where you're seated today, just between you and the Lord, this time between you and the Lord, what is the biggest obstacle standing in between you and what you feel like God's called you to do? And you may say, Mike, I don't even know what God's called me to do, but I'm open to it. What is that obstacle? Is it just fear? Man, if I really sell out to the Lord, I don't know what that's going to mean. Is it pride that I don't want to let down my guard and be insecure about my direction? Is it a financial obstacle? Is it a personal obstacle? Whatever that is, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to take that obstacle and I want you to set it in front of the feet of the Lord. Would you? Father, today you've got hundreds of obstacles sitting at your feet. We may look at some and go, oh, that's not a big deal. But to the person that laid it there, they feel like a grasshopper compared to that obstacle. Father, I don't know how you do this, but I've watched you do it too many times to question whether you can or not. Father, would you move our hearts and our eyes off that obstacle today? And Father, would you put our hearts and eyes on the one who's greater than the obstacle? God, would you pick our chins up? Would you put your arm around us? Would you grab our hand? And God, may today not just be chapel. Father, may it be a hallmark day in some of our lives when we look back and we say, before that I wondered. But today, God reminded me that even though I don't know if I can, He can. And God, may these lessons from an old story just ring true in our lives. Father, may you speak clearly, decisively, and intimately to our hearts. Father, I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, you got your outline, you got your Bible. Turn over the book of Joshua. Go over to Joshua chapter 1. Nation of Israel says, we can't. There's no way. We're not strong enough. We're not big enough. We're not fast enough. So God goes, okay, you can't. You'll wander in the wilderness 40 years. Moses, the man, the leader, the best guy to lead a group, dead. Now you got a group wandering in the wilderness. A whole generation's died off. Now I know they're going, there is no way we're ever going to see the promised land. Until this conversation happens with God and Joshua. Joshua chapter 1, verse 6. God comes to Joshua, who was Moses' sidekick, his number 2 guy, he and Caleb. And he goes, Joshua, guess what? Tomorrow morning you're going to get these people up, been wandering 40 years, and you're going to cross over to the other side. Now, here's what I want you to know. Listen to what he said to him. I want you to be strong and courageous because you're going to lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their forefathers to give them. You are going to be strong and courageous, Joshua. Here are some lessons I've learned working with great business leaders, great church leaders, great athletes through these years. And I'm telling you, these are principles right out of their lives, right out of the book. I want you to write down lesson number 1. You become strong and courageous when you have to. You become strong and courageous when you have to. We will lay in the weeds until we have to do something. I don't know how long Joshua has thought, I need to get the people across. I'm the guy. And I think it's really interesting. After God told him he was going to go, he comes back and tells him, Joshua, now here's what you're going to need to remember. You're going to need to be strong and you're going to need to be courageous. Now, do you think he's talking about physical strength or do you think he's talking about heart strength? I think he's talking about heart strength. I don't think Joshua's physical strength has anything to do with this. I think he's saying, Joshua, you need to be strong in here in your convictions and what you believe. And buddy, let me tell you something. You better be courageous. Because what's courage? Courage is standing in the face of fear, right? Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is standing up when you are scared to death and still doing something. When you walk out and you embrace the purpose that God has called you to, whatever it is, to take the gifting he's given you and to use it for him. And that's what I think a purpose is, all right? When you walk out and do that, you will become strong and courageous when you have to. But until you have to, you will lay back as long as you can. So here's what God's great at doing. God's great about getting his foot right on your rear end and going, okay, get on out there, and we're going to let you live it out a little bit. And that's why obstacles come up in our lives. And they either push us closer to the Lord or they push us further away, and the enemy makes sure of that. You become strong and courageous when you have to. Now, here's the deal. All along the way, you can know that God called you, and you can still wonder if you can do it. You'll still wonder if you can do it. I remember we were in Rikers speak last year, did your chapel. Ike was my pastor growing up. He was the guy that was the original pastor of Northstar that I helped. All right, so I've known Ike a long time. We go to this meeting. Now, Ike was always in these highfalutin meetings, all right? And so he drags me to this meeting with him, and I've got flip-flops on and blue jeans, and I'm just way out of my deal here. And we go to the upper floor of this huge mortgage bank company in Atlanta. And there was a guy named Bruce Wilkerson there that wrote the Prayer of Jabez, and all these big CEOs from around Atlanta, and they're having lunch. So we're sitting there. It's a pretty innocuous lunch, not really a big deal. And Bruce, during the middle of the conversation, I'm working at Northstar. Bruce, during the middle of the conversation, he goes, I believe in the dream God's given you in Kennesaw. And I tell you what, here's what I want to do. I want to help that dream. And he pulls out his checkbook. I'm not lying with you. Pulls out his checkbook, writes a check, $10,000. He lays it on the table. Then he looks around the table and said, who else believes in the dream that God's given this man? Well, I mean, these guys start yanking out. I mean, it goes to his left. The guy goes, I'll do 5,000. I'll do 7,000. I do 2,000. And I'm noticing something. It's coming around my way, all right? And the circle is getting really tight on me. And I work there, so I have to believe in it, right? I mean, I'm sort of at that point. And it's getting, somehow I got out of this deal, which I still to this day don't understand. And it's coming around to me. And here's what I'm thinking. I'm just going to be honest with you. What is the amount I can say my wife will at least kill me for? All right, I mean, that was what I was thinking. How much is coming back on my tax return? What can I say? Well, what do you say? Number one, I never have any money. I got receipts. I never have any money. I got an ATM. My wife doesn't trust me with a checkbook, which is a whole nother sermon. And so I don't have any of that with me. And so it's coming around to me, and I still remember like it was yesterday. I said, I'll do, and I remember the words coming out of my mouth thinking, this is going to cost me. All right, this is not good. And so I said $2,500. I'm going to tell you, we're at a point in our life, I didn't have $2,500. I just didn't have it. I don't know where that number came from, but anyways. And so $2,500. Man, let me tell you why I threw out the number. I knew it was coming back on my taxes, and I knew I could do that. That's why I said it. We get to the elevator, and Ike's like, wasn't this just an awesome day? Not really, Ike. No, not really. Ann and I are going to be at your house for counseling a little later tonight, and so I don't think it was that great a day. We get in the elevator, and I had invited a guy to the lunch who I'm thinking, he's going to be so mad I invited him. It cost him all this money now to come to this lunch. I wanted to be a blessing for him, but it ended up costing him money. We get in the elevator, and he said, listen, man, I wrote you a little thank you note. I want you to read it when you get in the car to thank you, man. Today was a life-changing day for me. I get in the elevator. He gives me the note. I get to the car, open the note, and this guy that was sitting beside me, had written a check to me for $2,500 to cover the obligation that I didn't think I could make. I did give that money to the church, by the way. Just if that's on video, I did give that money. All right, I wrote that over. That's a whole other story. But you know what's funny? I was talking to the guy later. He said, you know what would have been funny if you'd have said 20,000, I'd have given you 20. He said, I just was going to see how much you believed in it. I became strong and courageous unwillingly. But our purpose always calls us to get out of the box. Look at point number 2. Ready? We overcome our great obstacles when we believe what God has said. When we believe what he said. Verse number 7. Be strong and very courageous. So we know Joshua's waffling a little bit. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Don't turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Do not let this book of the law depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. We overcome, I want everybody to look at me. We overcome our obstacles when what's been in here, what's in here, begins to live in here. I'm telling you. If this is something you grab for chapel and church on Sunday, your obstacles will always be bigger than you. If this is something you begin to hide away in your heart, and that obstacle creeps in, and let me tell you something about obstacles and giants and storms. They never give advance warning. You never know when they're coming. They show up unannounced and they ambush you. If this isn't here, you're in trouble. I teach an executives Bible study every other Tuesday for guys in leadership at their companies. And a few months ago, one of the guys' moms passed unexpectedly. Here's a guy 3 years ago, barely came to church. I know him now through my Bible study, through our small group, and through the studies. And I meet him at a restaurant to plan his mom's funeral. And I walk in, and this guy's got his iPad out, but he had his Bible app pulled up. And he said, let me tell you what God's comforting me with this morning. And I thought, man, you got it. Life's greatest obstacle came your way, and you got it. You believe what God said, that there's hope after death. I know that, but when I go through it, I forget it. When we know what God has said, and it's put away. What did he say? My word is living, it's active, and it's sharper than any two-edged sword. Meaning it's always at work. It's always parsing. It's always working. But if I never read it, and I never put it away, I don't know. Listen, I don't know what God can do. I can tell you a history lesson on what somebody said, but I can't tell you in my journey what he can do. We overcome great obstacles when we're strong and courageous, when we believe what God has said. Look at number 3. And when you trust in what God can do. So Joshua ordered the people, go through the camp, tell the people, get your supplies ready. 3 days from now, you'll cross the Jordan here to go in and take possession of the land the Lord is giving you for your own. It's like God said to Joshua, just tell the people to trust me. Just trust me. I didn't bring you this far to leave you. If you don't remember one thing today, I want you to remember this. You can always trust God. Always. Mike, circumstances don't tell me that. I don't care what circumstances are telling you. I'm telling you, when the storm blows and the clouds clear, you can trust Him. Therefore, what's our job? To hang on for the ride. To cross the river and do what we thought there's no way we could do. Point number 4. We overcome great obstacles when we know that God is with us. We know He's with us. Joshua 1:9. Here's his parting words to Joshua before Joshua and the people make the great trip. Look at what he says. Have I not commanded you? Be strong. It's third time he's told Joshua. Joshua must be sweating in his boots, man. Third time he's told him this. Be strong and courageous, Joshua. Be strong and courageous. Don't be terrified. Don't be discouraged. Why? Look at what he said last. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you may go. Dr. Canner and the faculty and the staff and the coaches, campus pastor, athletic director, they can do their job preparing you. Let me tell you what they can't do. They can't go with you. They can give you the dream, but you're going to walk out of this campus one day. You're going to find a spouse, I pray for all of you, like I found, that is the most wonderful, incredible blessing in the world. But she can't do this for me either. My son is 17, getting ready. He'll go to college next year like a lot of you. I'm going to be putting him out on his own, you know. I can't go with him. I want everybody to look at me, and I don't want you to miss this. Please, please. He will never leave your side, ever. You have a relationship with Jesus Christ. I don't care how big the obstacle is. I don't care how daunting it may look. It's never you versus it. It's God and you versus it. And when God is in the equation, there's nothing ever greater. What I hate to see is some of you that have incredible dreams, incredible plans, incredible passions that God's put in your heart. And the minute an obstacle stands up, all of a sudden you begin to wonder, can I do it? This obstacle's bigger than me. This obstacle's stronger than me. This obstacle's tougher than me. When He is on your side, you can't lose. You can't. Even if you fail, you win. And you're going to fail. You're going to have times that things don't work out. But you're never alone. You're never alone. For some of you, man, you're in the middle of walking with the Lord right now, and this is fresh. You're like, man, this is it. Others, man, you're like a lot of the guys I sat with at Liberty during chapel. You know, we were the USA Today crowd, right? I mean, whatever was in the sports page that was on our knee during chapel. But at some point, we all have to get it. We all face our obstacles. We'll all have to live them out. If you feel alone, you lose. If you feel it's you versus it, you will always feel like a grasshopper. What Caleb saw, what Joshua saw, and what we see. If God is involved, we cannot lose. Therefore, I'm going ahead. Therefore, I'm going to do what God has called me to do, knowing He's with me. I remember hearing the story of a young Indian boy growing up, and when they would turn 13, what they would do is they would take these young kids, they would take them out in the woods. This is like their maturation into manhood. The father had trained them and gotten them ready and overseen their development into becoming a young brave. The night of their 13th birthday, they would blindfold them. They'd take them out in a deep crest of woods at dusk, and they would leave them out there. They would unblindfold them, and the dad would leave, and the kid would have to take his bow and arrow and defend himself for the night. So glad I wasn't a young Indian boy, all right? And so I sleep with a nightlight. And so it's a whole other deal. But these kids, they'd stay out there all night. Man, can you imagine how dark it got about midnight? You'd hear twigs snap, and you'd think something was going to jump you. You'd hear the rustling of leaves, and you're like, man, something's coming my way. I guarantee you by about 3 a.m., that fourth watch of night the New Testament would talk about, that's pitch black, man. I bet in the middle of that darkness, that kid never felt more alone. never felt more abandoned, and never felt like God or his father was further away. And boy, pensive, he'd stand all night just waiting. The sun began to come up and would rise over the hill. He could see the silhouette of somebody right on a little crest nearby. And boy, it made him nervous. This guy's waiting to attack him. And as the sun got a little brighter, he noticed it was his dad. Had stood guard over him all night. He was going to make sure nothing got to his boy. Ladies and gentlemen, it may be the dark of night in your obstacle to you. But I'm telling you, you can take it to the bank. When it's darkest, he is near. That's what he says in Philippians. When it's darkest, he is near. Physically, Christ would walk around this room today and he would grab your chin. And he'd pick it up and he'd say, listen, I know my Father's called you to great things. Can I tell you some good news? I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. Don't let that thing be too big. I am with you, and I'll see you through. Would you pray with me?